Hey everyone. Project Management in the Fire Service is available now on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. It was the Amazon #1 new release in business and reached the top 10 in multiple categories in both Kindle and paperback. This is the first and only book written by firefighters for firefighters, focused specifically on managing projects in the unique environment of the fire service. Every year, departments manage complex projects like apparatus design, station construction, software deployments, equipment rollouts, and policy development. But most of us receive little formal training in how to manage these initiatives effectively. This book takes proven project management concepts from the business world and adapts them for the realities of the fire service, including shift work, administrative turnover, and measuring success through organizational and community impact. Right now, if you buy either the Kindle or paperback version, message me on LinkedIn or email projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com with your mailing address, and I'll send you a signed copy for free. Our podcast doesn't run commercials, so this is a great way to support the show and the work we're doing. The link is in the show notes. All right, let's get into the show. Welcome back to Project Command. I'm Captain Peter Eunice, and I'll be your host. Today's guest is Barnaby Long, a firefighter from the United Kingdom with Capita Fire Rescue. Barnaby is also deeply involved in several major initiatives supporting the fire service community both in the UK and here in the United States. Barnaby serves as the managing director for the Memorial Stair Climb UK team, helping organize and lead an event that honors fallen firefighters and strengthens international bonds across the fire service. He's also an ambassador for the UK Pink Firefighters, an organization focused on support and advocacy within the profession. In this episode, we'll talk about the UK Fire Service, international collaboration, firefighter culture, leadership, and the incredible initiative to bring 343 UK firefighters to the US to honor the 343 firefighters who gave their lives on 9/11 by participating in the Atlanta Stair Climb. This is something that's really important to me personally, and I'm really glad to be able to talk to Barnaby today about the incredible work he's doing. So with that, let's get into it. Barnaby Long, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a real honor. I've done my research. We had some reading and stuff. It was great to reach out, and I think we've got to thank Pete secretly, haven't we, for maybe
That's right.
connected at the end of the day.
We'll give him a shout out. The Firefighters podcast, Pete Wakefield,
Yeah,
a mutual friend of ours.
He is indeed.
Yeah, Barnaby, we had a great conversation the other day, and actually, I just got off the phone with you the other day, and I was thinking, I cannot wait for this episode. I think we have a lot of really cool stuff to cover, and I got a lot of questions about the UK Fire Service and the stuff that you're doing with the stair climb and all that. But before we get into all that kind of stuff, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and just introduce yourself a little bit to the audience?
Yeah, so my name's Barnaby, as you said. I am 25 from the United Kingdom. I've been a firefighter since I was 21, so fairly early on, not as early as you can be, but fairly early on. I've enjoyed pretty much every minute of it. I started out as what we call in the UK as a retained firefighter, or as on call, which is, I think, a similar thing to you guys have as volunteer firefighters, but we get paid for that. So we'll live with a pager as you guys would. We do like 90 hours a week, responded from home. And within 10 months, 11 months of me doing that, I knew straight away that I wanted to kind of do it full time. And I did look, I think I spent a couple of months, a couple of years, maybe a year or two looking for what might be the options for me. And at the time in local authorities, so for us, so where you guys have your counties and stuff, we have similar, but we call them like brigades or services in the UK. And there was nothing at the time when I was looking that would be kind of open for me. So what I ended up doing, just up the road from me is a military base, and they fly out of there, and they were looking for firefighters at the time. So what I did was applied through them, managed to get a job through them. So about 4 years ago is when I started doing, it is aviation firefighting, but we are under like military rules and regulations and stuff. So I work as a contractor with Capita, and they are contracted to do firefighters across like the whole of the MOD in the UK. So I work primarily on air bases, covering the flying of whatever military aircraft we have here. And it's a great different side of like firefighting than you normally would have. Now I've done retained, as we call it, or on call. I've done 5 years with that with my local authority as well. So I've got a bit of both when it comes to getting the jobs,
Hmm.
having the experiences, but still being on shift and still getting the morale that you have on stations and stuff like that. So I quite enjoyed the kind of the mixture of the both. And it's a good contrast between the two because you spend your days at work dealing with aircraft and stuff, and it's stereotypically not as busy a fire station. It's probably the same in the US. It's aviation fire stations are not that busy. You've got big fancy trucks, but not really a lot to do.
Hmm.
So we're
Yeah.
always testing kit, always out there doing checks on equipment, doing some training, getting stuff in. And it's great for studying and things like that. So we tend to have people go through promotion and things quite often because you have the time there to really get your trade like knuckled down. And a lot of the managers are quite supportive of that, which is really good. But I've also spent my time riding the trucks in and out of the county on the local roads and stuff like that, dealing with our RTCs or our car crashes and things, as well as building fires, and had the lot. So I feel quite experienced for someone that's 25 and almost done just under 6 years. I feel like I've seen a fair bit, but also got so much more to learn,
Yeah.
especially internationally.
Man, don't we all? Don't we all?
Oh yeah,
I guess I'm coming up on, what is it, 17 years, and I still feel like I have so much to learn. And that's kind of the fire service, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
the day you
definitely.
stop learning is the day you should retire. But, and
Mm,
you and I talked on the phone, and we were just talking about all the different things you've been involved in. And, I would agree that for your tenure in the fire department, you have seen a lot. So I'm actually eager to talk a little bit about that. I wonder,
mm.
before we get into it, I was just curious, do you guys do EMS also, or do you guys have to be, we call them EMT paramedics. Is that something you guys have to do as well?
So I think so we out here, none of us are trained as what I suppose we'd call the paramedic qualification. Um, there may be some services. I think the biggest difference to start is there is no standardized training across like the country. So there is you there's the same roles. You're a development firefighter or you're a probie, and then you go up to competent, and then you go up to like your crew managers and stuff. But there is no set standard because I think you guys have like Firefighter One, don't you? Whereas is
Well,
that
yeah. So I'll let you continue, and then I'll kind of tell
yeah,
you because
sorry.
ours is a little bit disparate as well, state by state.
Oh, it is
It's
different, yeah.
not
So
it's
it'd
not
be
the
similar
same.
to us, yeah, yeah. So basically, that there is no standard of medical training across any fire service. For me, on my station, we're just first aid at work, which is kind of your basic, which anyone in any company could have,
Hmm.
not just a fire service, to any business. There are some that will have a higher level of medical. There are some that do like in-house training, so it's not a recognized qualification. There's kind of a bit of everything, but there is no we're not expected to run medical shouts or medical calls at all. We're only trained if they have a medical training. It's just to deal with something that you attend, and it's like part of that job or part of
Hmm.
that shout. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not what we attend, but we can do it if we're there, if we're
Interesting.
trained. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So for us, we have obviously, the United States is 50 states, and each state will have their own. So the levels are EMT basic, and then
Yep.
some states have EMT intermediate, it's called, and then the highest level is EMT paramedic. And so every state that I'm aware of, at least, will have their own. Like I'm in the state of Virginia, Virginia EMT, Virginia paramedic, but then we also have what's called the National Registry, which is actually a national standard. And so you have nationally registered paramedic, nationally registered EMT. And then fire training is a little bit different, so you have very different state by state, like Florida, for example, will have very different training requirements for firefighter one and firefighter two. And I guess I shouldn't say very different. They'll be comparable, but they are different. So that's really interesting. And it's so interesting. The last thing I'll say about that is EMS is such a big part of what we do day to day. I think it's like
Mm,
80% of what we do, 80 or
mm,
90% of our calls are EMS. So it's just this massive elephant in the room. So I'm
mm.
curious to hear, what's the dominant call type that you're going on?
So I think so. I mean, since I've left, I'm not with my local authority anymore. I left about a year ago, but when I was there for the 5 years I was there, predominantly from what we saw, just fire alarms.
Hmm.
Fire alarm activations, I think, seems to be the biggest number, and I think it tends to be on like a PDA, so predetermined attendance for if their building has a fire alarm, whether it's commercial or residential. They tend to just send a fire engine anyway, or send a truck to it,
Right.
and that would pre. I think that's a lot of what it is. I think depends where you are in the country. We've got some areas that are very hilly and out middle of nowhere where there may not be many buildings, so they'll probably have different shouts to where somewhere like London, where you're in the middle of the big city and you're probably getting a bit of everything. I couldn't really say every brigade and every service is going to be different across the country, but I
Hmm.
know typically we attend a lot of AFAs, so fire alarms. So they're very quick jobs. You're going to be there 10 minutes and you're going to be out the doors again.
Hmm.
But it's one of the things that we're there to do. Make sure the public's safe and make sure these buildings are safe. So I think, yeah, there isn't really. It is going to depend. I don't want to say that is categorically it because I definitely don't have the facts and figures for that in front of me. But I think that stereotypically, that seems to be what a lot of us firefighters talk about.
Sure.
Attending fire alarms and
Yeah.
oh, it's another fire alarm, or it's another fire alarm. Probably the same way you guys would be like, it's another medical call. It's
Oh
another
yeah.
medical call.
Or lift assists, we do a lot of those, or
Yeah.
community, like a service call, we would call it, where it's a
Mm.
lift assist, or somebody's electric wheelchair runs out of battery and you got to go, help them in the house or whatever, things like that. That's a big bulk of what we do. And then of course you have the car accidents. I guess you guys are probably going to a pretty decent amount of car wrecks, or at least when you were with the municipal department, you were, right?
Yeah, I think I think there's from what I attended, I think there was a decline. There's
Hmm.
been a less because for what we were attending in the brigade I was with, it tends to be we were only required if there was people trapped.
Hmm.
So if there is an incident or a car accident where there is nobody trapped, it's just the car accident. There's no requirement for us to be there. We're better off and more we should be available for the rest of the county to deal with other potential incidents or fires or anything like that. Um, I think probably is quite big in some maybe rural brigades. There might be others that have got lots of what we call like B roads where it's just single track or you can only fit one or just about two vehicles through them. Again, that there's such a broad range of landscapes in our country that every brigade is going to be different.
Sure.
And and again, there'll be different ways. Every brigade's going to have different kit to deal with it. So some might get mobilized because they've got a specialist bit of kit that they can deal with a certain incident. But then you've got bigger vehicles like lorries and not in HGVs and stuff. Well, they're going to require a heavier rescue team. So that's only certain stations that will have that kit. So yeah, there is an element to it. I haven't got the official facts. I know that I attended a fair few, but we also you kind of it seems to be definitely declining. I'd say as cars get safer and people are walking out of more car accidents because cars are just being designed as safer these days, aren't they? So definitely less than they used to be, but I still think they're always going to be there, aren't they? Because you never know what's going to happen on the roads.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, Barnaby. What's the firehouse culture like in the UK? So when you're at the firehouse, I mean, we have. I think I feel very comfortable saying that the American fire service has a very strong and how do I put this? Our culture is such a big part of what we do day to
Mm.
day. And even though every fire station, every fire department is different, if you go into a firehouse in Virginia or in California or in, Tennessee or wherever, there's going to be a lot of common elements to that culture. And I just wonder, what's the culture like in the UK firehouses?
Yeah, I think that's such a broad question to ask it, and I think there is so many different cultures, and I think that's probably the biggest thing. There isn't what I would say a definite culture because you have some stations like I used to be on call or retained. You only attend shouts when you're there. You only spend 2 hours a week
Hmm.
training together.
Yeah.
That's it. You only see each other when you're on shouts. So you may only speak. In that case, some stations will become closer. You're more of a family. You're there all the time. You may be there all the time if you get loads of jobs and loads of shouts all the time. Whereas on a full time station or a whole time station we call them, um, there I think there can be a difference.
Hmm.
Again, I don't think it's summable up in one phrase. I think there is a complete range.
Sure.
I know so what I've dealt with personally, so the station I've been on, I've been there for 4 years now. When I joined, I was the first probie in over 10 years. So the
Ooh,
actual
that was rough,
the
right?
average, yeah. So the average age of the station was like nearing retirement,
Huh.
and within the last 4 years, we've had about 6 recruitments, and I'm now one of the more experienced firefighters on that station. And in just 4 years, so the culture in just under 5 years has shifted from a station that didn't really want to do a lot, but we had to, so they kind of got on with it, but to all the way down to we've got young firefighters that are committed and they've managed to get through a job. They've just done their training, and most of us have got less than 4 or 5 years experience on that station, whereas there's only one or two of them now that have been on the same station for like 30 years.
Yeah.
So it is different, and I do spend a lot of time working with other aviation firefighters as well, and there is another culture that's different between local authority stations and then aviation stations as well, because each airport will have a separate fire service to the local authority, so they'll be privately employed by the airport on the in their jurisdiction. So I don't think there's a way to answer that
Hmm.
properly. Anywhere you go, you'd have different people. I think,
Yeah.
and that sums up the fire service. I think no matter where you go, what rank you are, wherever you're at, you're gonna have some people, and then you're gonna have others. And I think
Yeah.
across this, pretty much the same across for us.
I think that's right. Yeah, that's a lot. There's a lot of wisdom in that. In the U.S. fire service, it's so interesting. I've traveled around a lot. Just for various reasons, and been to a lot of different fire stations. Man, it's crazy. There's some things that are so universal. Like every firehouse in the United States that you go in is going to have blue recliners. The parking lot is full of pickup trucks. The bunk room is 65 degrees, which, Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's cold, which is great.
Mm.
The silverware never matches. You got 20 more coffee mugs than you actually need from various different construction companies and somebody's lawn care business. So it's just, it's, I like it because you walk into a firehouse anywhere and you'll see something that it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That feels like home. So yeah, that's cool, man. But I think you're
Yeah,
right too, that there's a lot of difference in firehouse culture. And of course, some are healthy and, some are maybe a little bit less so. And yeah, I think certainly you get a dose of that when you're the probie or the rookie. You definitely
oh yeah.
cleaning a lot of bathrooms, answering a lot of phones, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's part of it, isn't it? I mean, I think it tends to. There has been definitely been a culture shift from speaking to people that have been in the job a lot longer than I have. There's definitely been a culture shift over the last even 20 years, maybe 10 years, maybe. And it's just it all we all talk of it used to be part of the job. It used to
Sure.
be this, and I think there's a lot more inclusivity and acceptance and stuff than there used to be. But there's lines, isn't there? And you've got to be respectful to your fellow firefighters. And it's important that everyone, this job, it really can be for everyone. And I think that's a lot of where our fire services in the UK are going. And I think I'm all for that, with it being for everyone. But I'm sure Pete probably talk about it more than I will. We're still there to do a job at the end of the day, aren't we? And we've still got to be able to do that job. And there's definitely things that you've just got to be able to do. And it's very important that we don't lose the fire service culture.
Hmm.
You could travel to a station and go to the next station only 2 or 3 miles away, and there one will be brand new, one will be like 30 years old, and the people will be different, but they may be happier in one station than the other. I think it just there's just a complete. I don't think it's possible to sum that up at all. And I
Yeah.
think in some ways that's the joy of it. You never know. There's always other places to try, always a place to visit, and in some ways that's the joy of it. In some ways that's the hardship for it. I
Yeah.
think that's the best way to sum it up.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, Barnaby, let's switch gears here because one of the main things I wanted to talk to you about is for a lot of reasons is the stair climb that you are, and I don't want to misstate your role here, so I'll just kind of leave it broad and I'll let you talk about it. But there's a stair climb here in the United States, and you are organizing a pretty large effort. Why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about that and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so we are in September this year, on the 5th September, we're coming up to Atlanta, Georgia, to Truist Park. We've going to attend the Terry Farrell Firefighters Fund Georgia chapters climb. Patriot, I believe they call it the Patriot Day Memorial Stair Climb, at Truist Park Stadium. And we are bringing 343 UK firefighters all the way over to represent one of every firefighter that died in 9/11. And obviously that's you could talk about that forever. But where we kind of started. So the guy that founded the idea, he basically woke up one day last year and just thought, I'm going to do it. He's
Mm-hmm.
actually attended the climb twice already, but within the last 10 years. So he's already done it. He's already met the charity and everything. And when I applied, I just applied to kind of join him on the climb. And there was
Sure.
only 10, 15 of us. There wasn't many originally signed up. And as time went on, so my partner Olivia, she's also assisted me. She's on the committee with me as well. She works in aviation, like operations. So she does a lot of rostering, planning, booking in flights. So she knows everything about there is to know about flights. Maybe not everything. I probably can't say that, but she is incredibly talented in like all things aviation and booking flights and everything like that. So I recommended her to be put in touch with Scott, who kind of founded this idea. And those two had a bit of a chat, and then they put some plans together. They got the flights and stuff sorted, done a lot of chatting. And then that was kind of when we realized that Scott was kind of doing this thing all on his own without anyone helping him and running the whole thing off like one spreadsheet. And we were a bit like, wow, this needs some structure, needs some help. He needs a good team of people behind him. And this, I think that's the main thing about this, is it's all about teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
And from then on, so that was probably about July last year. We've just expanded and expanded. We opened recruitment to the UK Fire Services. We had a website, had a little Microsoft Forms. Anyone that is an operational firefighter, whether you're an airport, in the RAF, the Navy, anywhere, local authorities, literally any firefighter that wears BA could sign up to join us. And I think within the first 2 months of us opening it, we just had over 450 applicants across the whole country, which is obviously amazing just from word of mouth. There wasn't much promotion going on at all. Um, and then some more recently, we ended up having a committee at the end of last year of about 7 of us, and we've kind of phased through recently to. So Scott's ended up. He's had to step down, unfortunately. So I've now taken over because me and him were kind of running this as joint directors all the way up to about early this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had to step down. So I've kind of taken over complete as the single director, just purely because of the time that we've got. Obviously, it's May now. We've probably got about 4 months until we fly out. So we just needed someone that knew the mission, knew the right plans, and we don't want to deviate from what our original plan was. So yeah, I can say I'm the director of it. I would be nowhere without the rest of my team. And again, we'll come on to leadership and management stuff later because it's all in the lessons learned that we've got. But the team that I've got working with me now, the team of 9, committee of 9, they have been incredible. They have done so much work. And we couldn't do it without any of them, and especially the 350 of us that are actually coming out. They've signed up, they've committed, they're making sure they're paying and everything like that. So it is good. It's a joint effort. I can say that I'm planning this thing. I'm not doing all the planning for this thing. There is no way that's possible, but it needs someone to just steer it in the right direction,
Yeah.
and that's where I see myself. Not as the big head at the top, just the one that's making sure we're going in the right direction and doing things for the right reason.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, I got a lot to say there, Barnaby. The first thing is, as an American firefighter, let me just say thank you so much for what you guys are doing. It's just an incredible, man, it's just incredible. 9/11 is it's such a big part of the American fire culture. And so to see, the Brotherhood in action, to see our brothers in the UK coming over to, just to pay homage and to show support and show respect for the guys, the 343 firefighters that died that day. It's just incredible. So let me just say that at the outset, but also what you're doing is amazing. It's such a cool and such an impressive undertaking. And we're going to talk about the sort of planning element of this. I'm very interested to hear kind of your thoughts on that. But it's a big
Yeah,
undertaking, and you're obviously a very humble guy. You're not wanting to say, "Hey, I did it all." You're just kind of saying, "Look, it's a team," and
yeah,
I think
it
that's
is
the way to
definitely
go
a team.
when you do these kinds of things. You definitely need that team. So, man, pretty
100%.
cool.
Yeah. No, we're really looking forward. We did actually come over in March, so a couple of the committee members flew out in March. And we sat down and had a conversation with the Terry Farrell Firefighters Fund Georgia chapter. They very kindly invited us out for dinner. And we met the hotels. We stayed in the hotel we're going to stay in. We looked at the stadium and we spoke to the charity. And everyone is so kind and so welcoming. And I think going over there and meeting the charity was, it kind of inspired us more to push harder and stuff,
Yeah.
because we know how much it means to them, and they're the ones hosting the event. All we're doing is paying our attendance fees and turning up. We're not to say anything for the planning of the event. That's totally down them. They've been doing it 10 years. They're very, very successful stair climb in the US. I think they're expecting just under 1,500 firefighters and people to take part this year, so obviously a massive feat. I know we're bringing a big chunk.
Yeah, 25% of them are you guys.
Yeah, bringing 25%, but yeah, it's still really, it's still obviously important to recognise they're still putting the work in. They've still got to get their sponsors in place, their procedures, the way they do the registration and stuff. And I think we're just very, very thankful that we can be part of remembering what is such an important event. And I know we'll go on to it in a bit. So, but yeah, it's very it almost doesn't sound real when you talk about it, does it? Who flies 343 firefighters halfway across the world?
Yeah. Well, man, let's talk about that, Barnaby. So what was it like planning something like this? Let me ask you this. Is this the first large thing that you've planned or that you've been a part of managing?
I think so. I mean, this project is something that we wanted to categorize and we wanted to break down, and we did start to do that in the end of last year. And we looked at, right, who's going to do what, who's going to get the flights done, who's going to get the hotel sorted, who's going to organize the team. And you break it down and you start working in those roles, and it's almost impossible. You can't. The only thing we've actually found fairly easy so far is actually booking the flights and the hotels. That's genuinely been one of the easiest things so far, which I know it sounds difficult, but because of the legal processes and insurance, things like that, we have to be very careful with how we manage stuff. So the way that we decided this would be the best to do was to actually start a company and do this under a company name. So the company we're under now is the Memorial Stair Climb CIC, started in January. And all it does is it gives everything we're doing like a name for itself. So, the company is a legitimate company. We started in January. We're registered under Companies House in the UK as a non-profit organization. So we don't make any money. All of our money is reinvested into the community. And for us, that's all the firefighters and emergency workers in the UK and the US with our charity work. So you have to look at it in all of its aspects, and you can't just delegate someone to do one thing, because I can guarantee that one thing will open a whole box of questions that will need other people to answer. And I think that's the biggest trouble we found it in the end of last year, was there was too many people doing too much. And we had overlapping, and we had people looking at sponsors and trying to get sponsorship in, but it was never communicated properly. So there was other people doing it at the same time, and it was just one group of people working towards one goal with not necessarily defined roles. And even when we tried to do that middle of last year, end of last year, we tried to give everyone roles, and it's just an impossible task. It really is. And I think you've got to allow people to realize the scale of what you're doing. We are a national company that works across the entire of the UK, and we have got representatives from 97% of all UK fire services across the whole of the UK. So we're not local to anyone. There's no one that we can just go to for help. Everything we do is kind of a pathway, and you can't go to a small company and go, oh, we'd like a little bit of money to help what we're doing. We're a national scale. We need people that are going to help nationally, and that was a real challenge to begin with. And yeah, it's a big project, and
dude,
I
it's
could talk about
it's
the
a
individual bits.
it's a big project. I mean, what you're describing
Oh yeah.
here is a large, complex project. And man, I like to consider myself somewhat of an expert on project management. That's kind of my thing. But I got to tell you, man, as you're describing this, I'm like, dude, you fellas got your work cut out for you. I mean, you've got, the way I see it, you've got a financial side. You've got to, be accountable for the money. You've got to make sure that you have a good accounting of what you need to pay for, who's going to pay for it, what accounts it's going to come out of. You have all the logistics. You have planes, you have hotels, you have rides from the airport, rides from the hotel to the site, all that kind of stuff. You have internal communication, keeping an email list, making sure you're communicating all the updates, making sure people have an itinerary. They know that they're where, all these different things that you have to communicate.
Yep.
Then you have all the things that you have to be compliant with. You've got a business, so you've got business compliance stuff that you've got to do. You've got insurance compliance that you've got to likely take care of. You've got to coordinate between all these different fire departments. So you've got and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, of course. You got a lot
Yeah.
going on, man. This is a
Yeah, it
this
is.
is a serious project.
Yeah, it is. It's big, and I think it's been a very steep learning curve. I mean, so a bit of background. I've literally been a firefighter. I just passed my officer in charge qualification in
Congratulations.
February this year. Thank
Yeah,
you. So
congratulations.
I don't. I studied leadership and management when I was younger, so it was one of the things I'd done as I left high school. And I studied leadership management, so I have a bit of a background in leadership and management. But to an extent, when you look at actually break down what we're doing, it doesn't help. We're actually also running an event in the UK this year under our company name. So
Wow.
we've got a stair climb in the UK in July, and that's for all of the UK listeners. That's in Southampton on the 11th of July. So you would love anyone to come visit us for that. That's for all emergency workers, whether that's police, firefighters, ambulance, everything. So again, that's another. We're not just communicating with firefighters now. This is every emergency service in the UK we're trying to reach. We're also attending certain charity events. I've got the website open so I can remember and get all the dates right.
Oh, I have my notes
Yeah,
right here, so nothing wrong
yeah,
with that.
yeah. And then also, it's at the start of July, we're doing a fundraiser at the Blue Light Show in London, which is like an emergency services show for, again, all emergency services to kind of exhibit their best kit, companies to show what they've got to offer and things, and the shared learning on all sorts of different aspects of first responders and stuff. So that's like three different things we're doing this year. And I think the best thing that when I decided when I took over, it was to define these as individual things. So
Hmm.
we have a
Smart.
business, we've got business assistants, and their job is to purely make sure we're compliant, make sure that we've got people to help when people need help. I've set a UK lead, so Taz is our UK lead now. He's taken over managing the UK event, so it is his role to make sure that event runs, to make sure the right people are there, that there's comms about it, that tickets are getting on sale. He's also got a team below him as well. So there's a group there. We've also got the US side. So the trip, we're calling that the US trip. And we've got a leader for that. So Olivia, my partner, she's running that because of her knowledge and flights and stuff. It's been invaluable, to be honest.
Sure.
But part of that managing the US trip is literally team management, and Car, who are team managers, as well as Jorge and Carol as well. They're doing an amazing job dealing with everyone. But you've got 343 firefighters that you've got to make sure they all pay on time, make sure they're in the right place at the right time. We've got to get communications to them. And, we're spread from the tips of Scotland to the bottom of the country. There is literally no way we can see these people. We have to rely on phones, email, WhatsApp. And that really is what we've struggled with the most, is keeping in contact with everyone. And I'm sure you may have been aware, firefighters, we say over here, they are so difficult to deal with. And we all know
Yeah,
that.
that's
We all agree with it. And
truer words were never spoken. That's totally
yeah,
exactly right. That's
I'm not even, there are so many of you that have been so incredible. And, we have to thank each and every one of you for being a part of it. But the ones that are being more helpful, poking people, messaging people, and yeah, that's keeping on top of the business and the structure is very important.
so.
And I
What are you
can't say that
doing?
enough.
So how are you doing it? So what have you? If you were, let me put it to you this way: if you were to go back in time and talk to
Yeah,
yourself at the beginning of this project, what would you tell yourself?
use technology.
Hmm.
Use technology. I cannot. I think, Reese, the biggest thing we've done. So we set up when we started the company. We started our own like Microsoft 365 system. So we've got our own emails, our own SharePoints, our own data services and stuff like that. It was so important to make sure that you've got joint understanding and joint sharing of information across your committee,
Mm-hmm.
and use the information, use the technology, and use the kit that you've got. You've got systems that can track individual people. Let's use those systems. You've got systems that you just put on a website and then it fills out all of the forms. So our Microsoft forms that we used, you literally just click on a button, fill out your name, date of birth, which service you're from, use it to the absolute maximum that you can, because we didn't do that as early as I think we should have done. And that is massive, because since we've had that, it takes what used to be copying from emails and then putting them on a spreadsheet.
Hmm.
That information automatically populates, and it makes life easier. We've made other mistakes, but we've a lot to learn. There's been a lot of learning. A lot of us were more clued up on IT than others. I spent a lot of time using IT, but I've learned a lot more about IT in the last year than I have before. And again, you've just got to play. And what might seem like a null and void project, like I've spent a lot of time building web pages that were never used because the limit. So I tried to do login accounts, for example. Like we had a website where there was like a portal, and then every firefighter that was, we call them climbers that was coming with us in September, they could log in and have this portal where all the information would be there. There'd be a blog, they could upload files, we can download files. Um, but again, I spent 2 or 3, maybe 4 hours planning and designing that. It just didn't work. So
Yep.
you've got to know your technology, use it to your ability, but also know when it's the right thing to say this is not working. You've got to know, always have backups as well. I
That's
think that was the biggest thing. Biggest thing is using technology. I know you talk about AI as well, don't you? So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
um,
we'll get to that in a second. There's
yeah,
man, there's so much wisdom in that, Barnaby. Have you ever heard of the sunken cost fallacy?
I don't think I haven't actually. No, I
Sometimes
think I
people
have.
call it the gambler's fallacy.
Oh
So
yeah,
if you invest a lot of time like building that website, the fallacy is, well, I've already invested 5 hours in this website that doesn't work. If I abandon it now, I've wasted 5 hours, so I have to keep investing hours in it. Otherwise, that
mm,
time was wasted. But the
yeah,
fallacy is
100%.
the time is already wasted. It's already gone, and there's
Yeah,
nothing you
it's
can do to
already
get it
gone.
back. All
No,
you can do is waste
100%.
more time. And so
Yeah,
that's the called the sunken costs fallacy. It's not
yeah.
realizing that those costs have sunken to the bottom of the ocean and you can never get them back.
Nope.
And all
You
you can
can't lose
do
that.
is throw more good time after bad time.
Yeah,
So sometimes people call it the gambler's fallacy or sunken cost fallacy. But yeah, just
yeah.
it's interesting. There's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying there.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of that's kind of across everything. And the biggest thing, time goes on. I look at the watch. It's May. I have never lived a year of my life that has gone so quickly.
I
I
bet.
can
I have
I
no
can
doubt.
almost say that. It feels like, because obviously I work full time. I've been studying for my officer in charge qualifications. I've had to sit exams and go and attend courses as well. So this has not been a this isn't a full-time job. This is what we do and what we all do in our time off. And the important thing is knowing, exactly like you say, time is going to run away. You cannot waste. It's okay to waste time, because you can't get that time back. So don't dwell on what you've lost. Don't look at your day and gone, well, I've wasted 8 hours because I have only actioned 10 to 20 emails. You haven't wasted that time. You've dealt with those 10 or 20 emails. And just because it took you longer doesn't necessarily mean that you're not good at what you're doing. At the end of the day, look at where you were last year. Look where you
Hmm.
were a week ago. Look where you were even longer than that. It's impossible to achieve. It's possible to achieve what you want, but a lot of people aren't going to be able to do that, whether that's technology difficulties or just their mental health might be down, or their physical health might be down, or there's some sort of barrier in that way. And I've definitely learned, you do have to switch off because of the amount of work we have coming in and the amount of people I'm dealing with and stuff. You always think about it. It rolls in your head all night. When you're going to bed and you're like, I've got so much I need to do tomorrow. I should have done all of this. You can't go to bed thinking, I should have done all of that, because you've got the next day.
Yep.
And you have to, if it gets too much, that's why you have a team to help you. You've got people that you can go to. I've set inside business assistants that I can help me do stuff, or they advise me, or I go, I'll hold a committee meeting and go, look, this is everything on my plate. It's too much. And then half of them, they'll just turn around and go, well, I can do that. I can do that. And I can do that. And then that's it. That's,
Hmm.
rely on your team, but know it's okay to not get it all done straight away, because I can guarantee the end of that project will still be just as good because you've still completed it. You can
Yeah.
always look back, and you can't dwell on time, and that's the biggest thing that I would ever tell anyone. Don't dwell on what you haven't done, or what you've if you haven't achieved a lot, learn from it. The mistakes you've made, you won't make those mistakes again. So the next time you do something, you'll know not to do it that way, and that's what's more precious about that.
Yeah, and leadership, as you clearly know by the fact that you're living it, leadership isn't, I have to do everything myself or I have to be the expert on everything.
100%.
The
Yeah,
value of a leader is did you get the mission done and did you take care of your people along the way? And, a lot of times, in fact, most of the time, that means you're not going to be the expert on things, or there's somebody on
Oh,
the team that's
100%.
better than you at something, or, and it's not like, oh, well, I did 10% of the work and they did 10% and they did 10%, but this guy only did 5%, so it's not an even distribution all the time.
No,
And I think it seems
no.
like you've got a really good handle on that kind of stuff. But Barnaby, let
Yeah.
me ask you about this because I do want to get to some other topics here, but I want to
Mm.
get to AI because I don't want to miss that. What are you doing with
Yeah, yeah.
AI? Where does that fit into all this?
So I have a very love-hate relationship with AI. I
Hmm.
think I haven't paid for it. I won't pay for it as not yet. I know a lot of people that do invest in paying monthly subscriptions to it and stuff like that. I don't personally. I think because there is so much AI at the moment, I tend to kind of look at something and go, "Well, that's AI." And sometimes it can play the opposite of the role it's supposed to be playing because you put into AI whatever service you use, you ask it to make this amazing, for example, posters. We'll use posters. You make this amazing poster. I want to have this. I want to have this. I want to have that, and it's mind blowing. And you're like, wow, this poster is amazing. But you just looking at it, someone hasn't spent a lot of time on it because AI has done it.
Hmm.
And I sometimes think that you got to break down the tasks you need doing and what's going to be more catching. And again, I think a lot of people won't agree with my perspective on it. I think AI is brilliant for a lot of people personally. So I have ADHD and dyslexia, undiagnosed, but it's a long process here in the UK. And a lot of the time, I'll use it for checking myself,
Hmm.
or am I writing the right emails, or is this the right thing to say potentially? I do use it. I think everyone does. I think in this world, it would be silly not to use it because you have to make sure you're saying the right things and stuff, and you don't want to come across in the wrong way. And especially if you've never done something before, you need a
Yep.
bit of coaching, but use it in a way that's going to be helpful. Is it going to be better that you use it to coach yourself and go, well, I wrote this, what do you think, or can you help me rewrite it? Or because you lose your human touch sometimes. But
Hmm.
I also think it is incredibly brilliant because it really does help. And don't get me wrong, I know I say posters and stuff like that, but the way that it can rewrite emails, the way that it can help you understand things. There's emails I've been sent that I've had to put into AI and gone, I don't understand what this means.
All the
For
time.
that,
All the
for that,
time.
it's brilliant. It's
Yeah.
brilliant, and it can help you draft responses and all this. And there's such a big world that it can help you with. And I think we need to be choosing selectively what it is we're doing,
Yeah.
because and I guess it's probably everyone's going to be different. I haven't used the super high expensive versions of AI, so I may have different opinions if I used them, but I think it's just different people's priorities and understandings of it. I suppose you probably dealt with it a lot more than what I have.
Yeah, I mean, I also have a very love-hate relationship. I use it all the time for
Mm,
my business, at work, for,
mhm.
the podcast, all kinds of different things I use it for. I think if I could snap my fingers and make AI go away and never come back, I would do it like that.
Oh,
Um,
it's interesting.
but I
Yeah,
can't, and it doesn't
yeah,
matter whether I snap my fingers or like it or don't like it or use it or don't use it, it's here. And so, since it's here and there's nothing we can do about it, I think, let's get the most value we can out of it because there certainly are
100%.
negative consequences. Like I think, not to go on a tangent, but the data centers that we're building all over our country, I think
Mm,
that, in 10 years when the technology makes it so that we don't need that much physical space, we're going to have a lot of, giant data centers with vines growing up the side of them that are abandoned. They're basically just these giant scars on the land, and we'll kind of wake up
mm,
from an AI data center hangover and wish we hadn't done all that. But
mm.
so there are negative consequences from a lot of this stuff, but I think there's also a lot of positive, and it can do some good. And
Mm,
and so kind of once like anything else in life, there's good and there's bad, and it's
yeah.
kind of the duality of it. But I do think that it can be really valuable. Like a lot of times, like what you're talking about with
Oh,
document
100%. Yeah.
generation, with responding to emails. One of the things I really like to do with it is just learning new things.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
couldn't agree. Couldn't
like
agree
there's
more.
no way I could have a podcast. I mean, I don't want to say there's no way, but there's pretty much no way someone like me who's not particularly tech savvy could have a podcast. But like, what I'll do is I'll get an error message on the screen and I'll just take a picture
Mhm.
of it and upload it to AI or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. And I'll say, "Hey, what does this error message mean?" "Oh, you have a problem with your, audio input. How do I fix it?" So you could just troubleshoot things or just learning a new concept. Like if
Mhm.
I've got something at work, like I have to write a grant or whatever, I'll say, hey, explain grant writing to me like I'm 12 years old, and it'll explain it like a 12-year-old. Okay, great. Now explain it to me like I'm 18. Now explain it to me like I'm 37. So you can explain complex ideas in a way that you can understand. So I really like it for that. And of
Yeah.
course, like you're saying, it can create some, the logo for my podcast was made by AI. So there's a lot of use cases for it, but
Yeah,
I do
definitely.
think there's a lot of room for healthy skepticism.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a real risk that we will use AI so much that it will take away our ability to do a lot of things, which may or
Mm.
may not be a bad thing. Like, and sorry, I've been ranting here. I get a little fired up about this, but there's
Yeah.
less people in 2026 that know how to cobble and make shoes, and that's okay because maybe we don't need that skill anymore. So skills
Mm.
will be lost, and in some cases
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
okay. But in other cases, I think people use AI to replace their own judgment and critical thinking, and I think if you do that
That's what I was
enough,
going to
you
say. Yeah,
lose your critical
100%.
thinking and your judgment to some degree. So, in any case, it's a double edged sword for sure.
It is. I think use it to help boost your confidence.
Yeah,
If
there you
you're
go.
not quite sure, let it help you. Don't do it for you. Let it help you.
Hmm.
I think, and it's brilliant when you need to just get something done. You're running out of time, and it needs to be done, or you need to learn a process like you're doing. Help with error messages. It's so
Sure.
good because you'd spend what, an hour googling that before,
Hmm.
like using this system and this. Then you go through the manuals, whereas it just does all that for you, which is brilliant. Saves us time. But you also, I think I use it mostly for just building confidence. I don't rely on it. I don't always use it to check my emails, but if it's a very important email, I will use it to check my emails because it's confidence building in it. It's going to give you a good image, and it may come across someone you may never have spoken to or you want to come across in a good way. But I like talking to people in person. So I like getting on a Teams call. I'll have one or two emails or one or two messages on LinkedIn. I mean, I think we only messaged 4 or 5 times and we're straight on a call, and I
Yeah,
think it's perfect. You can get so much more speaking to people in person, but
you're
definitely
right.
use it to build confidence, and it will do that to people, and it will make people that aren't necessarily that confident in sending emails and stuff. And I've seen it in my team, for example. They've used it to help draft them emails, and they've sent that to the whole team. And it's brilliant to see. It's so good to see them getting involved with the team, and it's really, really refreshing. And they may not have been able to do that before. I'm not saying they wouldn't have done, because I think they're brilliant people, but there are people out there that it will boost their confidence because they'll understand things in a different way, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah, very well said. Well, the last question I've got for you, Barnaby, and it's kind of a personal question. So I hope hopefully feel comfortable answering this. But
Mm.
what was the motivation to get involved with this 9/11 event? And the reason I'm asking is because I can recall very vividly where I was on 9/11. I was 13 years old. I was sitting in school. It was early in the morning, and the school that I go to is like a mile from the Pentagon. So we
Oh
saw
wow.
on the news, we
Huge.
saw all
Yeah.
the saw the planes hit the towers, and then an hour or so later, the explosion at the Pentagon like rattled the windows on the other side of the school that I was in, and so it was really,
Awful.
really close. We could
Yeah.
see the columns of smoke from DC because where I grew up, Alexandria, we're two or 3 miles from the District of Columbia, so you could see the columns.
Wow.
It was a very visceral thing for me, and of course, as a firefighter, or now looking back, it was such a big motivation because as a firefighter now, I look back and you hear the
Mm.
stories of, guys on the engines and the trucks. They were on their way to the Trade Center, the World Trade Center, and they knew they were going to die. So the older guys were telling the younger guys, "Hey, write notes to your loved ones and tape them to the door,"
Mm.
because they knew
Yeah,
what was
yeah.
coming.
It's
And so
just
you just makes it gives you chills, when you hear about that kind of courage. And
yeah.
so anyways, I just wonder, like, what has 9/11 meant to you, and what made you want to get involved with an event like this?
So I think so when 9/11 happened, I was 9 months old. I've no memory of it. It's not until later in life when you start learning about it. Obviously, it wasn't. You start going to school and start learning about things, and I think you can't really be a firefighter without having an understanding of what happened on that day. I
Sure.
think that's pretty clear. Everyone knows it, and it is awful, awful, awful day. And hearing the stories, and I think I was interested in the event in a way that it's a horrible thing, and I want to make sure that I don't forget it.
Hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of my motivation comes from. Is I've seen the documentaries and stuff, and when we flew to New York, we visited the memorial site and the museum, and it was one of the most weirdest places I've ever been in New
Mm-hmm.
York in the memorial, because you almost can't explain it, but no matter how many people are there, it's just dead quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a great way to sum it up. It's a horrible event, and I don't want to ever let people forget it happened, because the people that day, like the firefighters and the other emergency workers, and even just the people in the buildings, they were so brave for what they did. And what we do is that job. They could have been attending just a fire in a different building on that day, but they weren't. They were at that job because they were on duty or in the area at the time that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the things they did, the stories you hear, and the jobs that they were doing, they knew the outcomes before they happened, as you just said, and they still did it with every bit of might that they have, and bravery and courage. And that is something that we should all be carrying in our jobs, because that was one of the worst. It was the worst incident I think we've had across the country in the world ever. And it's we should all be having that ability to do our job that well. So when you look at it, we're not all going to have that same motivation and courage to every job we ever go to. Let's say you've got a car that's on fire outside a house that there's no one in it, there's no one around it, and it's just a car fire. You're never going to have the same attitude as they did on that day when they have all those people to save.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times when you need that attitude, and you need to be able to do that. And to be a firefighter and understand, I think it's so important, because you have to study, don't you? In our job, you have to study. You have to look at your case studies and look at what's happened, and you know that is our job, isn't it? At the end of the day, and I think you can't not be a firefighter without having an understanding of what happened that day. And to have an understanding, you need to respect the people and honor what they did, because it was awful. To lose your life in the job you're doing, that we all still do. It is, yeah, it's a yeah, it's big. It's big. I come almost speechless about it. I don't really know what to say. You don't really know what to say about it, do you? About that day, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously being an American, being where you were, just around the corner, that must have been even worse. And to remember it as well. I know I speak to my parents who remember it. Um, some firefighters were like around at the time, and some of the people coming on our climb. We're planning on putting out some people's expression of interest. So everyone coming in America to America in September, we asked them to do like an expression of interest. Some of the stories that they've got from that day, I mean, it made me speechless just reading them.
Mm.
And, you know, it does mean a lot to a lot of people, but I just don't think it would be right to do this job without having an understanding of what happened and the bravery that those firefighters put in on that day. And I think that is basically the end of it. That the do all and end all is you have to respect them, because they did something that you know I hope all firefighters would do, but they did that. And I think that's as simple as it gets. I don't
Well,
really know what more I can say.
well, you said it all, man. I don't have anything to add to that. That was
Yeah.
absolutely perfect. Barnaby, how can people support you if they want to help the cause and they want to support what you guys are doing?
So obviously, what we're doing, out of respect for the firefighters 9/11, totally is at the heart of what we're doing, and that is completely the goal of the mission. So we have set up a Just Giving page, which we're going to send the link over to you
Yeah,
to get
I'll put
on.
it in the show notes for everybody who's listening. You can click on the show notes and we'll have all the
Yeah,
links Barnaby's
perfect.
talking about here.
Yeah, perfect. And what the money that we're raising this year is going to be split across three charities. If you want to find out more about the charities, we've got two in the UK. The Firefighters charity, which is a big charity in the UK that supports firefighters, whether it's through physical like rehabilitation, or they do some mental health work as well. They're really good for supporting firefighters and their families. The Blue Light Card Foundation is a fairly new charity. They've been around for a year, a couple of years or so, and they cover all emergency workers, and kind of similar to what the Firefighters charity do. But we wanted to open it up to all emergency workers because of our other events going on this year. And then the big one that will interest your listeners as well is the Terry Farrell Firefighters Fund, the Georgia chapter. I'm sure everyone knows the Terry Farrell Firefighters Fund. They're a huge charity in America. Um, and Laurel, the lady who's running the event that we're attending, she's so grateful to us to be able to come over, and it's the money that they raise literally helps basically first responder families in the area, and I think it's the same across the whole country as well. So whether they've supplied vehicles to people, supplied equipment to people, managed to get people in to help if they need to and stuff like that. And they're such a good cause that we want to make sure that we're also doing our bit for you guys as well. You're allowing us to come and do this climb and stuff like that, and it's just really important that we can give back to you guys as well. So I'll put a bit of information. Probably be easier to put it out because there's so much. But again, if they head over to the website, which I'll send you the link for as well, there's a section on there called Our Charities, and you can have a read about all the charities we raise money for and what they do. But the best way is just through the Just Giving page, or if there are any companies out there that might be interested in helping us financially, whether it's to help us get there or whether they want to help us. Or just have a visit with us, whether they want us to come and visit them, help them do some bits, or whatever we can do for you guys to help, for the companies to help us as well. That'd be awesome. Because again, we are self-funding this trip. We are paying for our own way. So each firefighter will pay their own way, whether they've self-fundraised that money or whether they've just paid for it out of their own wages, which a lot of us are doing. So yeah, a lot of the work going into raising money for the charities, which obviously it is the reason we're doing it, for remembrance and to help other firefighters across the country. Well, both sides of the pond.
What you're doing is incredible, and I'm so impressed with the way you've been able to manage this project. So everyone who's listening, please go check out the show notes for this episode. Give what you can, help support an amazing cause, and hopefully I can make it down to Atlanta to see you guys. And if not, I'll certainly be giving some money to the charity. And yeah, man, just so impressed. So Barnaby Long, thank you so much for doing this, my friend.
You're welcome. I want to do a big shout out to my team before we go, because
Yeah, please do.
they've obviously been so incredibly helpful. So Livia and Taz, my executive committee members, leaders of the UK event and the US event. We've got Kai, who's managing our team. Carol's the US assistant. Jorge's US assistant. Pete's doing his little bit here and there, I'm sure he knows. And Richard, one of our business assistants, and Stuart as well. That you're all putting in such an immense effort, and to just be, these people applied to be part of my committee. They weren't chosen. They didn't they volunteered. They wanted to help, and from just applying to help to the amount of work they're doing and helping me do all of this, hats off to them all, and we really appreciate all their work they're doing for us as well. So definitely couldn't do it without anyone else. Without anyone.
Well, God bless you. God bless your team. Incredible work, and let's stay in touch, man. We'll get you on right before you go to the climb, and we'll do another episode.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Take care, my friend. Episode of Project Command. And as always, if you have questions, comments, or episode ideas, send us an email at projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com. That's projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our audience. We really want to get in contact with you guys. Love answering questions. So please send us an email. This has been Project Command, bringing command level thinking to every project in the fire service.